Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 1680. Today we're talking about the king of cool. That's right, Steve McQueen, in his own words. Here we go.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today I'm in warm Tempe, Arizona, with a very special guest by the name of Marshall Terrill. Marshall, are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
Hey, I'm ready, and I'm ready to put the pedal to the metal.
All right. Sounds just like something Steve McQueen would do. Well, before we dive into a proper introduction and we talk about this very cool, King of Cool book that you've written, what's one little thing that most people don't know about you, Marshall?
Wow, that's a question I didn't expect. I'll say that most people don't know that I am a Beatles fanatic.
Really? Rock and roll, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah. In addition to Steve McQueen, I mean, music and especially the Beatles were my first love.
You know, this is pretty cool. I remember years ago, my wife bought me a book, and I don't remember the title. It's a very large book, and it's kind of the Everything About the Beatles book, and that wasn't the name of it, but it's a large book, and it goes into depth into not only their life, but a lot of the stories about the lyrics to their songs and how over time so many people just made up stuff and invented things about what was really going, the whole thing with Paul being dead and all of this. And I'm sure many of that the Beatles just laughed and said, as long as it's selling records, we're really happy. What is it about, I mean, this is a tough question, but what is it about the Beatles that you love so much?
Well, you touched upon it, the lyrics. But, I mean, first of all, it's the melodies. And then second, the lyrics. The lyrics, in some cases, they are very autobiographical. In other cases, they're nonsensical.
Right.
In other cases, like you said, people interpreted for themselves, and Lennon had addressed that, like, hey, you know, it touched your life this way, that's great, but what I'm saying is it touched my life in this way. But that's what I love is the autobiographical aspect, that they could make their songs so personal, and yet it would translate very well to the general public. And the other interesting thing is we're never going to see another like them again. You know, we're never going to see another band like them. There's never going to be another big band that will take over the world like them because everything's so fragmented now. So, I mean, we have what we have. And but with them, we have that great catalog of music.
I am the walrus, cuckoo, cuckoo. So there you go. Yeah.
And there's a perfect example of a song that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan too. And I really love the fact that it's carried over for generations and generations. And even my kids who are in their 20s, well, I guess my daughter's actually in her early 30s now. Man, where does that put me? Enjoy their music, and it really fits all genres. I mean, when you can get in an elevator and they're playing an orchestral version of a John Lennon and Paul McCartney song, you know, oh my gosh, here we go. It's pretty cool, and you just start humming the song and the words. Very nice. Well, let me give you a proper introduction, Marshall, and we're going to dive into this very cool book. Marshall is a noted film, sports, and music writer, and the author of more than 25 books, including best-selling biographies of Steve McQueen, Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Billy Graham, and Pete Maravich. His latest book is titled Steve McQueen, in his own words, and it serves up the most credible and thought-provoking insights of the King of Cool, spoken by the man himself, using more than 450 quotations drawn from more than 5 decades of media coverage, memorabilia, and research. Accompanying these quotes in this magnificent book are over 500 photographs, personal documents, and many mementos, most seen for the first time. Steve McQueen, in his own words, is the perfect book for everyone interested in this American original, published by our good friends at Dalton Watson Fine Books. And guess what? One lucky Cars Yes subscriber is going to win a signed copy of this book. This is no little book. This is something very special. Just go to carsyeah.com, click on the free book button. I'll send you my very humble ebook titled Fill Her Up, and your name will be in the hat. If you've already subscribed, your name is in the hat to win. This book is compliments of Marshall, and Dalton Watson Fine Books. Very nice of them to do that. We'll be back in just a minute to talk with Marshall some more, but first a word from our valued sponsors. They make this show possible, so give them a listen. Hold on, we're with the King of Cool. We'll be right back. The best way to protect your vehicles is with a Covercraft custom-fit car cover. I know because I've been using their covers on my vehicles since 1975. Plus, they offer a multitude of options depending on your situation. Indoor covers include form fit, dust stop, the oh-so-soft fleece satin, and their very unique View Shield, a cover that protects while allowing you to see your favorite vehicle while the cover's on your car. Amazing. Need a cover that will protect your ride outside? Their incredible options allow you to choose from Weather Shield, Sunbrella, Weather Shield HD, Block It, Reflect, Carhartt, Evolution, Nova, and Weather Shield HP. So many options. Whether you're looking for rain protection, UV shielding from the sun's damaging rays, breathability, dust protection, snow protection, even ding protection, and protection from those paint-destroying bird droppings, they've got you covered. Their soft touch covers are safe for your paint, and the custom fit keeps them from blowing off. If you live in a windy area, get the Covercraft Gust Guards. They're a must-have if your car sits outside in windy conditions. Worried about theft? They have cable locks too with built-in grommets that keep your cover safely on your vehicle. Their website makes ordering fast and easy, and their talented customer service department will walk you through any ordering questions. They can customize a cover for almost any vehicle on the planet. And I've got a deal for you. If you use the code YEAH120 at covercraft.com, you'll get 10% off your Covercraft order. That's right. So go to covercraft.com, use the code YEAH, YEAH120 at checkout, and get 10% off on me, Mark here at Cars Yeah. Covercraft, they've got you covered. American Collectors Insurance, that's who now protects my Porsche Turbo. Yeah, the one I call my Orange Crush. When it came time to renew my policy, my carrier jacked my rates up, even though I'd been with them for years. I'd never made a claim. No tickets, nothing. What's with that? Adios. So I started shopping around and kept hearing about American Collectors Insurance from fellow automotive enthusiasts, friends, and folks in the car industry. I did some investigating and learned that American Collectors Insurance have been protecting collector vehicles since 1976. I'm not a price shopper when it comes to insurance. I want to be able to sleep at night. I also want agreed value protection for my special ride. With an agreed valued policy from American Collectors Insurance, I'll be paid what my vehicle's full agreed value is. A number I set with the insurer at the start of the policy, so I know there will be no surprises about what my car's value is, should something terrible happen. I shopped around and decided to protect my car with American Collectors Insurance. Give them a call for a quote today at 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324, and protect the ones you love. Make sure you tell them Mark sent you. You'll be glad you did. American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. All right, Marshall, we're back. And as we start on this journey that you took with Steve McQueen in this book, you know, the whole book is about quotes. And I would love for you to share perhaps a success quote or a mantra. Maybe it's a favorite one of yours of Steve McQueen. It's a nice way to get the inspirational tires turning a little bit here on Cars Yeah. So, Marshall, grab the wheel.
Thank you. Well, I actually have two quotes that I'll share with you.
Nice.
And it won't take that long. The first one appeals to me as a journalist. And the quote was, "There's nothing in the world that I don't want to know." And I love that quote because, again, you know, he's this big superstar. He's made it to the top of the mountain. He could rest on his laurels, but he doesn't want to do that. McQueen was a guy that was just hungry his whole life for knowledge. He wanted to know how things worked. And so that particular quote really resonates with me as a journalist, because as journalists, we always have to know something. We always have to know how things work. If we're forced to know things that we know nothing about, and then we got to turn around and then we got to write about it as if we're an expert.
Yeah.
And that happens almost on a daily basis. And then the second quote appeals to the cynic in me. And it was when a reporter asked him, "What has success done for you?" And he replied, "What has success done for me? Well, I seem to have a lot more friends."
Well, that translates to the guy named Steve McQueen, because, I mean, who doesn't know who Steve McQueen is? And when it comes to quotes, your book is just filled. There's 450 of them in there. And to pick one as a favorite is absolutely impossible. But I'll pull one out that I really loved, and that is, when I believe in something, I fight like hell for it. And you think about Steve McQueen and his whole life, going all the way back to his very challenging childhood, being arrested and put in a reform school, and evolving into one of the most iconic actors that this country and the world has ever seen, and then becoming so beloved. And of course, we lost him at a very young age. And that just built up his presence even more. When you think about superstars passing away young, I mean, think of James Dean. When you go, man, everybody knows who he is. He only made really one movie, I think, maybe two. How did he get so famous? Well, sometimes that happens. So, but I love your quotes, and they make a world of sense. I would like to kind of dive into this story and this book that you've put together, because I enjoyed going through it last night. And what I enjoyed about it were the quotes, the imagery. It's a very different Steve McQueen kind of book. And there's plenty of Steve McQueen books out there, but yours gets very, very personal. So tell me, you seem to like writing about people. What got you fired up about this? And maybe talk to us a little bit about some of the very unique things you learned while you put this book together.
Well, thank you. The reason why I put the book together was, and let me preface it with, this is my 7th book on Steve McQueen.
There you go. So you know the guy pretty well.
I know him well, and I've accumulated so much information, and I never stopped accumulating. I work for a university, and I notice professors, and they specialize really in one thing, and they're constantly accumulating information about the one thing. And I've kind of adopted Steve McQueen as that model for me. I mean, I write about other subjects, but every now and then I will revisit Steve McQueen. And the reason why I revisited him this time, and this started in 2014, by the way, was I would see every year 1 or 2 McQueen books come out. Some were okay, some were pretty bad. And then I just started realizing, you know what? McQueen wanted to do an autobiography before he passed away, but, the cancer took hold of him so quickly he didn't have an opportunity to. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to do a book with just Steve McQueen's quotes, him telling his story in his own way, and in that way, finally, Steve McQueen can have his own say in the matter. And so I thought, well, let's do that, but let's match up pictures that fit the time frame, fit the situation, and it would almost be like an autobiography with pictures and him telling his story in his own way. And I thought, it'd be easy to match up these photos with these quotes, and, I could just knock this out real quick. Well, like I said, that was 2014. It wasn't so easy.
Well, yeah, no kidding. He was a very complex individual.
Absolutely, and that's what I think these quotes reflect, was that the fact that, he came from a very troubled background. He came from a very hard upbringing. But then fame hits. And then once fame hits, then you're opened up to a whole new world. And I always say McQueen got his PhD in the streets. And with that, when you're exposed to so much more, then you get this worldly education that a college classroom can't teach you. And so these quotes really reflect that street wisdom, but also that wisdom that he accumulated through fame.
When you were putting this book together, this jigsaw puzzle that took so long, you thought it was going to be easy, but then somebody mixed up the pieces, I think, and made it a little bit more challenging for you. What were some of the things you discovered along the way that made you stop and go, whoa, that surprises me, especially since you've written so many books about him?
Well, first of all, the knowledge that he had about the movie industry. In his lifetime, Steve McQueen was leveled by critics as, he's just a guy who plays himself. But as you will see, and as it is unveiled, he had a much more complex background than most people give him credit for.
Right.
And so, he talks about the movie industry, where it's going. He talks about how the studios are becoming dinosaurs, and how real people, as opposed to matinee idols, are going to be the movie stars of the future. And so he was able to predict with great clarity where the movie industry was going, and how it was going to be the directors were going to be kids with 8mm cameras.
Yes.
And that's what really blew me away. And he was on the precipice of all of that. So Steven Spielberg, believe it or not, was one of the directors that was considered for Le Mans. And so I'm thinking, on the top of my head, this really probably applies to Spielberg. It applies to all those guys, those great movie makers of the 70s who came through film school. And that's what McQueen was seeing. And that's what McQueen was incorporating in movies like Bullet and Le Mans, and as the 60s had turned into the 70s. So that's what really shocked me. And then, of course, later on, he got quite philosophical about his life, where it was going. And, at the end, he became a born-again Christian. So those quotes on his deathbed about his life were really, really eye-opening.
Absolutely. What was your favorite part of putting this big monster book together?
Boy, when you say favorite, it was painful. So
sometimes pain is favorable when you're trying to piece things together when you finally get some pieces to fit.
Well, and the interesting thing is, this book came in the mail to me the other day, last week, and I was flipping through it, and I was going, okay, this was worth the 6 years that I put into it, because it was painful putting it together, because I had to go over and over and over it again. And when you do a book, you literally go through it 100 times, if not more.
Yes.
And then you have other people go through it, and you have them critique it, and that's painful.
Yeah.
But you do that to catch all the mistakes. You do that to make sure that there's clarity and continuity. And so, again, it hit me last week. Okay, this was definitely worth the effort. But at the time, it was painful. It was not fun, and it really never is. The only time it's fun is the promotion of it, the fact that it's out, and the fact that somebody can. The funnest part for me really was holding that book. It's 5 pounds.
Yes.
So when I was holding this book, I was going, holy cow, this thing's heavy. I love it. This gives me great satisfaction.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, like giving birth for 6 years, that's a tough thing to do, Marshall. Most definitely. But
that's what it felt like.
Yeah, I understand. I give keynote speeches to groups quite often, and I typically title them what I've learned after 500, 1,000, 1,500, it'll eventually be 2,000 interviews. And when I started putting the words together for these 15, 20, 30-minute talks, I thought, oh, this will be easy. And then I went back to find which guests to talk about and specific stories. And I went, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And I've had people tell me, you should write a book about all the conversations you've had. And part of me goes, yeah, that'd be great. And the other part of me, when I talk to people like you, no, thank you. I don't want to give that birth again. It would be very, very challenging, but it's a masterpiece you put together. And for anybody out there that enjoys Steve McQueen, and of course my audience loving cars, and McQueen loved cars, and we'll talk about his love for cars in a little bit. You are going to want to get your hands on this. And of course, with the holidays coming, this is the consummate car guy, car gal book to buy as a gift. So I'll plant that seed in your head. Now, Marshall, I always ask my guests for a big challenge in their life, a big failure. If you want to talk about that in particular outside of the book, that's okay, but we can define it as this book, and you've touched on this, the challenge of 6 years of trying to piece this whole thing together. So wherever you want to take us, it's more about the lesson that you learned through this difficult time that helps you gain more momentum as you come out on the other side. So take us down any road you'd like.
Well, this book, I subscribe by a famous old saying about writing, and that is, I hate writing. I love having written it. And that applies to every single book that I do. Yeah. And so when you're in the process of doing the book, you have to chain yourself to the desk for 3 to 4 hours at a time. Now while you're writing, there is that surge. There is that surge in energy. There's that bump. When you get going on the keyboard, it's great. It's a natural high. But the thing is that, I work a full-time job at Arizona State University, and then when I come home, I've got to go right to that desk and shut that door and tell the wife that she won't be seeing me until bedtime.
Yeah.
And then I've got to start writing that book. And in this particular case, it was, I had all these tons of these photos scattered around. I had all these quotes listed. I had to somehow find a way to match all these quotes to each picture. That was easy to do for the first part of the book when it had to do with his background. I could then pinpoint it. But then when he starts talking about fame and he starts talking about other esoteric things, I'd have to find a quote that would match, a picture that matched that
right.
quote. And then, of course, I had the additional task of trying to find out who owns the photo or which one's royalty free how much is in my budget?
Yes.
And then we're talking about a 500-page book. What photos have I used before in other books? Which ones have I not? What are new? What are some ones I can use again? So it was not just one challenge, but it was about 10 different challenges.
Oh my gosh.
And then of course, then you had to, okay, the other big challenge was just the whole overall vision of trying to put this together. Do I put this thing together with just quotes and do I divide it up in chapters? How do I tell this running story of Steve McQueen with quotes? How do I piece all that together? So, I mean, that vision didn't come together for years. What I had to do was just try to arrange everything in order. And actually, it was my publisher, Glenn Morris of Dalton Watson, said, let's tie this all together with captions. And I said, okay, that's perfect. I can do that. So in spots, you're telling Steve McQueen's story in these captions, and then you're allowing the quote then to take it from there for a couple pages, and then you have to let the reader know, okay, well, this is where Steve McQueen is in his life at this point. And so then it was kind of all tied together. And then somebody asked me, well, why did you put it in the chapters? And I said, well, I want people to sit down. I know this is a lot to ask of them, but I'd like them to sit down in one reading and read the whole book. It's 500 pages.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a lot to ask somebody. And the other thing, too, was I didn't want to divide it into chapters because I just wanted there to be this free flow. And some chapters would be a lot longer than others. And then the other thing, too, is I didn't want to categorize. I hate categorizing people. So I didn't want to, just put a whole bunch of car quotes together. Mm-hmm. So what I did do was I timed everything chronologically. So the book is Steve McQueen with his quotes as it pertains to his life at that point in time. So again, it's like he's taking you on this adventure and not me. All I'm doing is just giving little context and captions where he is in his life, and then McQueen will tell you his story.
Well, you did a great job preparing for my talk with you last night. I sat down and started going through it, and then before I knew it, my wife came out and she goes, "Aren't you coming to bed? You got a 6 a.m. show tomorrow morning." I said, "What time is it?" She said, "It's almost midnight." And I went, "Oops," because it was so much fun. And you read the quote and you look at the picture and you look at the details in the photograph and you think about what was going on at the time in that time period when you look at, let's say, the cars in the background or the other actors or the different people that he was relating to, his family, his life, and so forth. And my regular listeners know I've had his son Chad on my show twice now. Gotten to know Chad. I can call him a friend now, and he's just a great guy. And when I had him on the show, he shared this whole other insight into some things I didn't know about Steve McQueen. So you did your job really well. Yeah, you kept me up real late. When the alarm went off this morning at 5, I was like, oh man, thanks a lot, Marshall. You kept me up past my bedtime, but it's a brilliant read. Let's take another short break for our sponsors. We come back. I typically dive into my guest's passion for cars, but we're going to dive into Steve's passion for cars as you've learned it. And we're going to mix things up a little bit here. So sit tight, keep the seatbelt on. We're here with the King of Cool. We'll be right back. My favorite collector car magazine is Keith Martin's Sports Car Market. I've been a subscriber for decades. Sports Car Market is the Wall Street Journal for enthusiasts and collectors. It's your monthly must-read, whether you dream of owning a collector car, maybe you have 2, or maybe you've got 200. Sports Car Market has been around for 31 years, and it's filled with valuable articles, intelligent write-ups, and the latest auction sales. Go to sportscarmarket.com and subscribe today. Here's a couple deals I have for you just for listening here on Cars Yeah. If you use the checkout code Cars Yeah, you'll receive a 50% discount on your digital subscription at Sports Car Market. That's an exclusive offer from Cars Yeah. And guess what? Here's another deal. If you'd like to get the actual magazine, use the code BSH for Buy, Sell, Hold. That's code BSH, and you'll get $10 off your annual print subscription. That's right, $10 off. Both of these are exclusive offers here at Cars Yeah for Sports Car Market Magazine. Just go to sportscarmarket.com and get your deals today. What do you do after running a race team for 27 years with over 100 professional wins, multiple wins at the 24-Hour of Daytona, and a win at Le Mans? Well, if you're Kevin Buckler, a racer and the Racing Group's team owner, you create Adobe Road Winery. Located in Petaluma, California, he and his team have created a winning combination with the Racing Series, 4 ultra-premium red wine blends that are in a class of their own. Like racing, these wines comprise of art, precision, engineering, science, and a whole lot of fun. You can choose from 4 blends titled Redline, Apex, Shift, and the 24. Today I'm going to tell you about Redline. It's a rich and complex blend delivering a taste of ripe blackberries, black cherry licorice, and a hint of toasty oak. An added very cool option is that this features the world's first interactive wine label. That's right. When you pour the wine, the three-dimensional tachometer actually hits the red line. It's incredible. The Racing Series is a killer gift for the automotive enthusiast in your life, and I've got a deal for you. If you use the code CARSYEAH, all one word in all caps, when you go to checkout, you'll get $10 off any purchase of wines from the Racing Series. The wine ships promptly and arrives quickly right at your door. Use the code CARSYEAH at checkout for $10 off of your purchase today. There's always a seat at the table for excellence with the Racing Series. Go to adoberoadwines.com and use the code CARSYEAH to save $10 today. Cheers! All right, we're back, Marshall. Now, was there a point in time that you learned when Steve became a car guy, or did you kind of figure out that he was always into cars? Now, he was young. He had a terrible childhood. His parents were pretty messed up, let's put it that way. Ended up at the Boys Republic, reform school, and that's really what changed his life and set him on a much better course. But your understanding of his passion for cars, was there a point in time when it really kicked into high gear? Because he sure loved racing.
Yeah, he sure did. Well, and I have this philosophy about people, and I don't know if you're born with it or not, but you're either a car guy or you're not a car guy.
Yep, bingo.
I'm not a car guy, but I have an appreciation, and I've been to many car shows where I look at cars and I think, oh, that's beautiful, but I'm not the kind of person that will want to go underneath the hood and look at the engine and know how it runs. Steve McQueen was that kind of guy, and he was that kind of guy. I want to say at a very early age, actually, the quote that he gave was like, when he saw the wheelbarrow go around, that's when he started getting into mechanical things. So it was very, very young.
Yeah.
But when he put that application into place when he was a struggling actor in New York City, and there were these great photos of him racing around on a track, almost like in I forget what the name of those types of cars are, but it was on a dirt track, and it was like a hot rod almost. And I don't even know where he got the money to do it, but he's in a helmet. He's racing like an open air hot rod style car.
Yep.
So I think from that point on, he got hooked. Now, when it really kicked into high gear was when he got on the show Wanted Dead or Alive, because as you know, you're in a car guy, it's going to cost you a little bit of money to indulge in your passion.
Right.
So when he had that series, that's when I think he bought a very expensive Lotus, and he started racing it. And his quote was, "I really got addicted to it was when I won my first trophy."
Yeah.
And then from that point on, he's always been into motorcycle racing and into car racing, and they both intertwined throughout his life, which is interesting. And then as he got older, he did a complete 180. Then he started collecting old trucks and old cars.
Yeah.
So he really did the whole spectrum of new cars. And I think you probably saw this one quote, which I love. He talked about reading an article when he hit it big. He talked about he started buying like a motorcycle for every place he was. He started talking about buying suits and ties and everything. And he read an article on Tony Curtis where he walked out into his driveway and he couldn't decide which car to take to work that day.
Yeah.
And there's a great picture of McQueen looking at two cars in his driveway, and he can't decide, and they're both beautiful cars.
Yeah.
They're both collector's cars. And he said, and damn if it didn't happen to me. And so there's a beautiful illustration in that. So yeah, he was into collecting way before it became fashionable.
He had some magnificent cars, that's for sure. Well, I typically ask my guests about their first really special car, but I'm going to twist this up into Steve. So when you think about Steve McQueen and his first really special car, was there one when you're doing the research for this book that stood out? Now, we all know he had some magnificent cars, Porsches, Ferraris, all sorts of things, the Lotus, but is there one that you think when he finally had the money to go buy something special that meant a lot to him?
Well, there's two cars that come to mind. The first one is I think it's a 1958 Porsche. It's a black Porsche that he raced.
Yeah.
The Speedster, and he talked about how that was like his first factory-owned car. So you've got to believe that meant something to him.
Yep.
And there was a great story where he traded this car, and he traded other cars to get better cars. And now in this day and age, you don't trade cars, you just accumulate them. But back then, that's what you did. You traded to get better cars. He traded that car, and then he bumped into to a guy that had that same car. And this was years later in the 70s. And McQueen, he approached McQueen, and he had the car with him, and he said, "I think I've got your car." And McQueen immediately dashed to the car. He ripped something open to where he could see the roll bar. And, he pointed to it and said, "Yep, that's my roll bar. This is my car." And he hounded the guy for months to sell him the car back. And, McQueen was so cheap, he didn't want to pay anything extra. So he hounded the guy to sell him the car back at price. So the guy finally relented and said, "Okay, Steve, but here's the deal. If you pass away, I get to buy the car back." And so Steve left it to his son, Chad. So Chad has that car. That's one of those cars that he brings to the Boys Republic, which I'm sure you've seen because I know you've been there.
Yeah.
And then of course, the other one is the collectible Jaguar. And 1957, I believe.
Yeah, that's the SS that is now part of the Peterson Museum.
Yep.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, they only made 3 of those type, and of course that car is worth millions. But it also shows, McQueen's exquisite taste in automobiles. So I think those two were his early favorites.
Well, I'll tell you a little insider story about that black Porsche Speedster. That car was purchased after McQueen let it go and was owned by Bruce Meyer, who's the quintessential car collector in Los Angeles. He's been a guest on my show. He's a longtime friend. He's part of the Peterson Museum as well. And when he was on my show, he talked about Steve hounding him and even mentioning he didn't want to pay him extra for it. And Bruce is such a spectacular guy that he said, I just felt like it belonged back in his hands. So he sold that car back to him. Of course, that car is now owned by Chad. He'll never let that go, probably hand it down to his kids. It's one of those incredible cars. And it's a beautiful black Speedster and has a really special story behind it with Bruce Meyer. And kudos to Bruce Meyer for letting it go. Absolutely. So yeah, great story. Nice way.
And Meyer is the gentleman that I am referring to.
Yes.
I just couldn't think of his name at the time. But he did tell me, I said, well, yeah. He said, but it would cost me millions to buy it back.
Well, yeah, they won't let it go. I mean, it's one of those priceless pieces of history, especially for Chad and his family now because of the legacy there. And that Jaguar, of course, I've seen that car. It was on display at the Boys Republic a few years ago when I was there for the Friends of Steve McQueen car show, which is a huge fundraiser. They raised, 2018, they raised over, or maybe it was 2019, they raised over $1 million at that show to help the boys and girls that attend that school, to help them get on their right feet, just like that school did for Steve McQueen. So that legacy continues on as well. Now, I always ask my guests a bit of an introspective question, and that is, if you were a vehicle, what would you be? Let's twist this up again. Knowing what you know about Steve McQueen, if Steve McQueen was manifest as a car, his attributes, his personality, who he was as a man, an actor, an icon, what do you think, Marshall? What kind of car would Steve McQueen be? I know, this is getting very difficult.
It's getting very deep, too.
Yeah.
The thing is, he owns so many beautiful cars, it would probably be one of the ones that he had owned because, he saw himself, in his motorcycles and his cars. As a matter of fact, one of the quotes about Steve from one of his friends was, Steve McQueen didn't love women. He loved his cars.
Yeah. Yeah, like a lot of us car guys.
And we know how much he loved
women.
We know how much he loved women. So it tells you his level of love for cars was just that much more. I would have to say it would have to be one of his cars because, he talked about how much love he put into his cars. And I think he told his daughter, Terry, he said, my cars love me so much that they wag their fenders at me when I walk by.
Well, let's try to define this a little bit more. Now, Steve McQueen was a racer. I think if I was trying to answer this, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, if you want to contradict me, please do. But he was a consummate racer. I mean, that was one of his incredible passions. And when you look at what he did, the blood, sweat, and tears that went into the movie Le Mans, you see he broke his neck practically doing that film, and the bank accounts and a bunch of other people as well. So let's maybe narrow it to a race car, if you'll indulge me here. And then when you think about race cars, of course, the movie Le Mans, I would put Steve McQueen as a Porsche 917, because that is a car that continues to be iconic. It's highly sought after. Everybody knows, and of course, it's got to be the Gulf liveried car. Everybody knows that car that is anything into automobiles. I'd put him as a 917, but knowing him the way you do, would you maybe put him in something different, or even a motorcycle? Because he loved riding his bikes.
You know what? I would have to say Indian motorcycle, because he loved his Indian motorcycles, but there's one bike, and it's actually the picture is in the book. It was a rat bike. It was comprised of all these other different parts, and maybe that was what McQueen was. He was comprised of so many different parts, which represent his life. Perhaps that's the vehicle, and that was his preferred favorite of all these iconic cars and motorcycles that he had. She said that rat bike was his favorite. So maybe that's your answer.
You did a better job. Definitely. That was a 1947 Indian Chief, but it was a chopper. So it had been modified. And when you think about Steve, he's a bit of a rat. And I mean that in a very kind way. Yeah. A rat rod or a rat bike is a compilation of cool parts and bits and pieces. When you think about the complexity of his personality and his changing as a human being, an actor, a human being, and going through life and where he ended up, you just answered that question way better than I did. So thank you for taking me there. He loved his bikes, that's for sure. All right, Marshall, we're entering what I call the last lap. I'm going to fire off some quick questions, get some quick answers from you. What's one of your personal habits that you believe has helped you in being a successful writer?
Well, I kind of adopt what Steve McQueen did on screen. Chuck Norris was starting out in film, and this kind of gives birth to the book. But Chuck Norris was starting out in film, and he took Steve McQueen to a screening of it. And McQueen, and as they were watching it, Norris leaned over and said, "This is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. It's the worst film." And McQueen basically said, "Listen, here's what you do." He goes, "When you let the character actors fill in the parts, and then when you have something important to say, then you say it. That way, everybody knows that line was yours." And so I approached my books the same way, and that is, I'm the narrator. I'm kind of the character actor. I fill in those parts, and then when Steve McQueen has a quote, then I let him say it. And in the past books, I did that very sparingly, and so that's why there are a lot of these quotes that I never used that are left over for this book. So I've adopted that. I don't have to write everything. I don't have to fill in everything. But what I have to do is when I have something to say, keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it simple. That's how Steve McQueen did it on screen, and he let his presence be the impact. He didn't fight for lines. He fought for the placement in the shot, and that's kind of how I've adapted my writing.
If I could arrange for Steve McQueen to come back for one evening and sit down and have a drink and a meal with you, what's one question you would ask him?
Wow. Well, first of all, I've always said Steve McQueen probably wouldn't want to sit down with me because he had a notorious dislike for journalists.
We won't tell him that you're a journalist. We'll just say...
or that I've done 7 books on him.
Yeah, no, we won't tell him that.
Wow, the one question that I would ask him.
Yeah.
I guess I would ask him, what is in a script that would attract you to do a film? What are the elements that are in a script that would actually have you commit your life to doing a film?
I like it.
That would be the one question.
That's a great answer. Very good. Now, when it comes to automotive advice, I always ask my guests, what's the best automotive advice someone else has ever offered them? What would you say is the best automotive advice based on all these quotes and what you've learned about him that Steve McQueen would offer somebody about vehicles?
Change that oil every 3,000 miles.
Take care of your vehicles. I know it's a basic thing, but you know what? That's definitely what everybody should do. Yeah, it keeps your vehicles running. And he was a very hands-on guy. I'm sure he did that. Now, I always ask my guests for great resources. Of course, I'd be remiss not to cite Dalton Watson Fine Books and Glenn. They make they publish some of the finest books. And you mentioned in our pre-show chat, they're one of the most incredible publishers that you've ever worked with, right?
Right, correct. Yeah, absolutely. What I love about them is most publishers, they look for ways to cut corners, but Dalton Watson looks for ways to add value to the book. I'll give you an example. One of my books is called Steve McQueen, Tribute to the King of Cool. And Glenn wanted to add like a hardcover shell to it. He goes, well, what's one thing we can put inside? Like, I said, well, you know what? I've got a recording of him going over his notes for Tom Horn. And I said, what about a CD? I said, this would give people great insight as to how McQueen thought. You know, he's reading off the page, and then he's kind of giving his notes. And so he said, yeah, we'll do that. Let's do that. And he goes, and then let's sign and number it. You know, that'll add value. Oh, and let's get Barbara McQueen to sign it.
Wow.
You know, just he kept thinking of these things. And
yeah.
I thought, wow, I really like this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure all you listeners, I put a link to that. If you've never been to Dalton Watson Fine Books website, you need to go and be careful because you're going to find a lot of things that you want to buy there, but that's okay. They really do make some incredible books. Many of their books sit on my library shelf here at Cars Yeah headquarters. Now, obviously we're talking about your book, Steve McQueen, In His Own Words. That's a book you definitely should have. Is there maybe another book that you didn't write that you might refer our listeners to that you're fond of?
Well, you know, I always tell everybody I'm very fond of Matt Stone as a person and as a journalist. Matt does a really great job seeking out the truth. So Matt's written, I think, now 3. He's got a new book on the making of bullets.
Yeah, I'm
looking
at it right
Stone's
here. It's
book,
sitting on my reading table.
Yeah. Matt's a good man and a good journalist, and he gets to the heart of the matter. So I would always recommend Matt.
He's been a guest here on the show, and you can find Matt's show here on the Cars Yeah website. Just go to the resources tab or to the guest tab, and you'll find all my past 1,680 guests. And you know, there's another place on the Cars Yeah website called Guest Recommended Books, where this book, Matt's books, and over 1,700 books are listed there. It's an incredible resource for you. And you know what? I've made it really easy. Just one click, you can go buy them all if you'd like. That'd be really cool. All right, Marshall, we're up to the checkered flag. Today, I know you said you're not like the consummate car guy that maybe McQueen was, but I know you like cars and you've learned to acquire a taste for cars after writing about McQueen so much. So today I'm going to buy you a car. Any car in the world, doesn't matter where it is. I'm going to park it in your garage, but there are some rules to my game. Since I'm writing the check, my listeners know these rules. You can't sell it to buy a bunch of other toys with or go on a nice trip or whatever you might want to do. It's got to be a keeper, and it's got to be a car you would drive. No garage queens or dust collectors. But here's the kicker. It's the only one cool car, fun car, that ticks all the boxes that you can have parked in your garage. So what am I buying Marshall Terrill today?
Okay, I'm going to add this caveat. I just saw a picture of the brand new Alfa Romeo, and the design on it was fantastic.
Okay.
It looked beautiful. It was sleek. Mechanically, I have no understanding of the Alfa Romeos. I know historically, I won't say anything negative, but I had a friend who used to own one, and he used to go to his garage quite a bit. Now, with that said, I'm hoping that the new one perhaps would be better mechanically, but I saw that design and I was really just floored by how it looked. And so I'm going to go with that.
I think the car you're talking about is the new 2021 Alfa Romeo GTV, which is a two-door coupe. Now, they do make a GTA version, I believe, but I think the car you're talking about is this new one that's coming out. And yeah, it's stunning. And Alfas, the old ones, old Italian cars, like anything, old Jaguars, British cars, whatever. They're a little bit of work. But these new cars, I think cars are so bulletproof nowadays that you don't have to worry about all of that. So, okay, I'd be happy to buy you the new GTV. I think it's stunning. You're going to have a lot of fun in that thing. Would you have a color so I get you the right one?
I'm good with either like a sterling gray or a black.
Gray or black. Okay, I think it would look stunning in those colors. So I'll pick one out for you and surprise you. How does that sound?
I'd say you're a very generous man.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Marshall, you've taken me on a fun ride with the King of Cool today. Really enjoyed learning more about this marvelous book you've written. Thank you for sharing your journey, this 6-year journey to put this thing together. Before you drive off into the sunset in that new Alpha GTV, is there maybe one little piece of wisdom or guidance that you gleaned from learning more about these quotes from Steve McQueen that you could share with the Cars Yeah audience?
Wow, you always ask me stuff that I really don't even think about or prepare for.
That's okay. That's all part of the fun of being on Cars Yeah.
Well, I guess the lesson learned would be that wisdom comes from anywhere. It doesn't have to come from somebody with a PhD. It could come from a guy that has lived a life that's well lived, a guy that has seen a lot of different things, a guy that has experienced a lot of people and places. So just understand, I guess, that wisdom can come from many, many places, and it will be wise to listen to what everybody has to say.
Absolutely. And like Steve McQueen did, you know what? Just be your own person. Do your own thing. That worked for him, most obviously. And I always say, don't try to be anybody else. Just be you. And it'll be a lot easier and a lot more fun. Is there a good way for people to connect with you?
Well, I have a Facebook page. I have a Twitter page. I'm very, very responsive on my social media. So, yeah, if anybody wants to get a hold of me, they can easily do it that way.
Is that just under your name, Marshall Terrill?
That's correct.
Okay. I'll make sure I put links to those on Marshall's show notes page so you can follow him. I'll also put links to the Dalton Watson website. You can find all of those. Make sure you keep up. And you know what? If you want to add a very cool, fun book to your library of automotive books, this is the book to do it. And again, one very lucky subscriber, compliments of Marshall, who's going to sign it, and Dalton Watson Fine Books is going to win a copy of this book. So make sure you go to carsyeah.com, click on the free book button. I'll send you my ebook, which is called Filler Up. We'll get this a couple weeks time so everybody gets a chance, because the book just came out, just now available, and you could be a lucky winner. Marshall, thanks for being so generous today with your time, your expertise, and for sharing your experiences with us and this fantastic new book. Until you and I talk again, I'll see you down the road. Oh, by the way, before I let you go, a quick shout out to Jeff Abraham at Jonas PR for connecting us. Jeff has connected me with many people in the past. Jeff, thank you very much. You do a great job there at Jonas Public Relations. I'll see you down the road, Marshall. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you. It was a blast.
This was fun. If you're listening to Cars Yeah, you've probably spent some time working on your favorite ride. But how confident are you working on your finances? You may be able to rebuild a fuel injection system, but can you decipher the details of a mutual fund? If you're like me, investments, insurance, annuities, budgeting, and other financial concepts may seem a bit daunting, but what if I told you there's a book that describes these subjects and more in an easy-to-read and a very humorous way? My friend Chris Kimball, CFP, a longtime sponsor and past guest here on Cars Yeah, has written that book, and it's titled The Saga of Ike and Penny, a couple's humorous journey through the confusing world of finance. It's a fun look at things you need to know. Everything from investing to effective ways to get rid of credit card debt, and it's probably the only book on finance with a VMAX on the front cover and a classic Mini Cooper on the back. The book's available at Amazon for just $10, and this book will dramatically improve the direction of your financial future. I gave copies to each of my children. All securities are through Money Concepts Capital Corp. Christopher Kimball Financial Services is not affiliated with Money Concepts Capital Corp. Get your copy, The Saga of Ike and Penny, today.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.